Jablonski, how much better do SR4U laces make your touch? It's like having a glue-covered boot just without the stickiness. What? Somebody already used that? What's going on, guys? Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com, bringing you another SR4U Q A, your football boot related questions and my answers to them, all pulled from my Instagram, SR4U_Josh, which you see on screen right now. It is also linked down below. So if you have a question that you'd like me to answer in an upcoming Q&A, make sure you follow me there if you haven't already. Also, if you guys enjoy the Q&A series on the channel and want to see it continue, don't forget to support this one with a like. And if you're new here watching for the first time and don't want to miss out on daily content from me, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. Jablonski, if Nike had to get rid of either the Tiempo or Mercurial, which one would you rather they keep? Maybe this is a surprising answer given the fact that I have been such a fan of the Tiempo line on this channel, but honestly, I'd rather them kill off the Tiempo line than the Mercurial line. And the reason why I say that is because it does feel like Nike's going to take the Tiempo line in a direction that a classic style football boot maybe shouldn't really go, and you have other options out there if you're on the market for a kangaroo leather boot made in Japan. Mizuno, Copa 19 Plus is really good. The new Puma King Platinum I think is really good. There's lots of options if you want good leather boots, at least as of right now, where the Mercurial line I think is the most important line of football boots in the industry, period. And it seems like every time a new Mercurial comes out, Nike introduces something that we've never seen before. It really does kind of set the bar every time a new one comes out on what the latest and greatest tech is in a pair of football boots. And like it or not, that has had a huge impact on the industry. Obviously, everyone's going to have their own opinions on each generation of Mercurial, which one is better, which one is worse. But I think that the Mercurial line is something that, with that concept, Nike has done some of their best work, and I wouldn't like to see them get rid of that. Hey Jabulani, does a split sole improve a football boot? It definitely doesn't, and I'm kind of the opinion that the logic behind a split sole construction is not very logical at all, because you're taking a sole plate that would typically be made out of one piece of plastic, given the plastic technology that's out there now, with the studs directly attached to that, which makes for less layers of material and a lighter overall construction. That is kind of what we saw Nike introduce with the previous generation of Mercurials, the Superfly 5 and the Vapor 11, with its kind of anatomically formed sole plate made out of one single layer of material rather than a bunch of different layers. But then come the next generation, Vapor 12 and Superfly 6, we now have the split sole construction that still has that anatomic sole plate in there, but now there's like 18 other layers of material that adds to the overall weight and stiffness of the sole plate. And somehow that's better, or at least that's what we're led to believe. And that to me is kind of the logic behind split soles. It exists almost as, hey, this is a little bit different, you should buy it because it's different and not what we've done before, even though it is something that they have done before. And again, I kind of feel like split soles were introduced in the first place just to be visually different than everyone else, and hopefully consumers would kind of buy into that concept of, oh, these are distinctively different, I want those because they look different. And that's pretty much all a split sole really has on offer. It's not to say that there haven't been great split sole designs on football boots. Predator has had some of the most amazing split soles of all time, so there's definitely a way of making a split sole great, but as an overall concept, I don't think that there's really any benefit to it, just negatives. What is your go-to penalty spot, and do you have any tips on how to get better at taking them? Over the course of my career, if you want to call it that, I haven't taken a lot of free kicks, but I have taken a good amount of penalties, and I remember missing one as a kid. I was probably like 8 or 9 years old, and I ended up hitting the crossbar going for the top left corner. And I was just overconfident. I hit the ball way too hard, or harder than I needed to, and I missed the penalty. And then from there, I don't think I've ever missed another penalty in a match. So for me, my opinion on penalties, if the objective is to score, is take a shot that you're confident in. So what I would personally recommend doing is practicing 2 different shots, meaning 2 different spots on goal that you feel like you can hit very, very consistently. For me, I will either shoot directly down the middle, right along the ground, or I'll shoot right along the ground to the right side, to my right. That's where I feel most comfortable shooting. I'll only go down the middle if I'm really, really confident that the goalkeeper is going to dive, and I'll kind of just wait him out. But if I feel like the goalkeeper is probably just going to anticipate my shot, I'll shoot really right on the ground, nice and hard, bottom right corner, very difficult to get to. So those are going to be my 2 spots. But again, everyone's going to be a little bit different. Some guys really like to drive the ball and they feel confident doing that. I just don't like doing that. I feel like there's too much risk associated to that. A penalty should be more of a sure thing. Obviously, there's pressure associated depending on the situation, but if you can have 2 spots that you're confident in hitting, that I feel will give you the confidence to be able to score a penalty once the situation comes up. Ask J Mike, he knows.
Go for this. I should wait.
Can a professional player use a takedown model football boot in a professional match? Absolutely not. That's against the rules. But more seriously, yes, they can. We just don't see it that often because the big name pros playing for the big name clubs in the big name leagues are typically wearing top end models because they're all endorsed athletes getting free product or paid to wear product from the big brands, and the big brands are going to provide them with the best of the best equipment to wear. In the case of examples of pros using takedown models in a match, though, it has actually happened most recently during the World Cup, and I believe to this date, Ochoa, who was the Mexican goalkeeper, was wearing the Mercurial Vapor 12 Pro rather than the Flyknit Vapor 12 Elite. And as I've said many times on this channel before, the Vapor 12 Pro is an excellent pair of boots. If you're more into classic Mercurial with the Tajin synthetic upper, the Vapor 12 Pro is probably the one you'll prefer over the more expensive Elite model. So that's one, I guess, more recent example. But I think a really big example would be Messi, the man himself. For the longest time throughout the entire run of the F50 Tune It series, when he was wearing that particular model, he never actually wore the F50. He always wore a modified variation of the takedown model F30. That has to go down as one of the weirdest professional footballer endorsement deal situations of all time, because you have a giant brand like Adidas having a huge name like Messi, who they're paying tons and tons of money to basically headline their F50 line, which at the time featured a Tune It system. That was the whole point of the F50, where you basically had interchangeable studs and uppers and sole plates that they were calling a chassis at the time. There were a couple of pros that did wear them, but for the most part, there weren't too many pros wearing the F50 Tune Its, period. But Messi, kind of the main face of the line for the sake of advertising, never actually wore the F50 Tune Its with the interchangeable studs. He always wore the takedown model F30, which became very, very evident when they transferred to the translucent parts of the upper. So the F50.8, as an example, that had the translucent heel on the F50 Tune It. The F30 version had the translucent material through the midfoot, which was the version that Messi wore. So unlike some of the camouflage boots that he's had over the years that were always some kind of custom variation versus the ones you could actually buy, it was very, very clear that Messi was just wearing a takedown model rather than the more expensive one. And it obviously worked for him. So for those that make the argument that it's the player, not the boots, there's a perfect example for you. Arguably the best player of all time played a large chunk of his career in a takedown model, granted a custom takedown model, rather than a top-end pair of boots. JJ, what boots are good for high arches or opposite of a flat foot? Most of you probably already know this by now, but if you don't know, I used to work at a soccer store selling boots, and every once in a while someone would come in with really high arches on their feet, and the issue that you'd run into in terms of getting the right fit for them is that the volume of their midfoot, because the arch is so high, is abnormally big. There's a lot of space underneath their arch, but because the arch of their foot is so tall, it kind of lifts the top of your foot. And often football boots have a very kind of slim profile to them with not very much volume through the midfoot. So you can run into issues with the boots just not fitting properly. Based on my experience, it's one of those things where you kind of just have to try on a variety of different boots to see what works. Typically, boots that are going to have more stretch through the midfoot area, as well as a more traditional construction with the tongue, might be a little bit more forgiving in terms of the amount of volume that you're going to have through the midfoot. But typically, if you have a really high arch on your foot as well, your feet are going to be quite narrow. So there's complications in regards to getting the proper fit. There's really nothing that I would say specifically available right now that I think is going to be really good for you. I would say, one, probably avoid laceless boots. I would say if you need a particular type of fit, period, laceless boots are probably not going to be a great option for you. But other than that, I would kind of just make a guess and see how they fit. If you're ordering online, pretty much every single retailer offers free returns if that's something that you need to do, given that they don't fit you properly. But it really is a matter of getting to a store, trying everything on, and seeing what fits you best. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I just don't. Should you put more money into the football or the boots? I'm pretty sure I've definitely answered this question before on the channel, but it's an interesting question nonetheless, and I'm not sure everyone has heard my answer. It might surprise you, but I think that the ball is actually more important than the boots. And I say that in this particular situation. As long as your boots aren't making your feet bleed, meaning that it like hurts to wear them, then you're perfectly fine with pretty much any boots as long as they're comfortable, they fit you properly, and you're happy with the way that they feel. You don't need top of the line football boots to play well, as we talked about with Messi at the start of this video. But it is important to note that the ball is really the only thing that is required to play this sport. So the logic behind $300 football boots and a $12 Walmart ball, I just think is really, really dumb, because that $12 Walmart ball is basically like kicking around a balloon. It's just not that good. My recommendation, if you are on a budget for your ball and your boots, is if you play in a league that uses the same match ball in every single match, invest whatever it is to buy that exact same ball and use that to train with, because the consistency that you will get from practicing with the ball that you use in a match, I think is super, super important. I didn't play in too many leagues where we had a consistent match ball just because it was always provided by the home team, and I thought that that was the dumbest thing ever. But when I finally did play in a league where there was a consistent match ball, I just really enjoyed that. If you notice with professional players, when they play in the league, before they play that league game, they train with the league ball, and then they go and play in the Champions League. Before the Champions League match, they train with the Champions League ball. That's because different balls have a different feel to them, and that feel definitely matters in regards to your ability to perform. So for me, having a good quality ball is more important than a pair of really expensive football boots. Jim Bob, since you have been talking about how you think the Nike and Adidas duopoly is starting to weaken, who do you think are the two smaller brands most likely to challenge Nike and Adidas? I appreciate that you've been watching the videos, but my conclusion in the specific video that you're referring to, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen, was actually the exact opposite of what you're saying. I think that Nike and Adidas, as the two top brands, are only kind of making the gap even bigger rather than the gap being closed, to the point where it feels like the average consumer doesn't seem to care how good the final product is. And I think the laceless stuff from Adidas is a great example. Some of the sloppy design and some of the silly takedown gimmicks that Nike is charging you more money for are a great example of this. But it almost seems like Nike and Adidas are making football boots to a certain extent for the sake of being different rather than for the sake of being better. And even if the product is worse than what we had before, just because it's different, people seem to be happy with that. Where some of the smaller brands that are legitimately improving upon their boots year after year, they don't really get the credit for it because people are just so fixated on what Nike and Adidas are doing. And again, don't get me wrong, I think that they make some of the best boots that you can buy, but they are not the absolute best over everyone else. So I think the gap's getting bigger, not smaller. It's Nike and Adidas on top, Puma in a distant third place, and then everyone else. And I don't see that changing. Anyways, guys, that's it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. Again, if you have a question that you'd like to ask for the next Q&A video, make sure you follow me on Instagram, SR4U_Josh. It'll be linked in the description. If you have any questions regarding anything that I discussed in this video, leave it down below in the comments, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. If you're not subscribed already, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live, which happens every single day. All my other social media information is also linked down below, so be sure to go ahead and check that out. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.